welcome back to another episode of Go Ask Alice, the show where we jump down random internet rabbit holes and bring you wonderful factoids from our adventures in Wiki Wonderland. I'm Drew, and I promise I won't reference any more Fallout music. With me is...
I'm your co-host, Lindsay, and I have broken my ankle sitting down.
Oh, no. And I am Sarah, and I'm currently recording in a room filled with hundreds of fake teeth.
Wait, Sarah, I love teeth.
Oh, I thought you freaked out. No, of course you love teeth. I forgot you collected people's wisdom teeth.
Past tense, I still do. Hello, audience. If you have wisdom teeth that you would like to get rid of, please mail me. I love teeth.
You would love this room.
Wait, yeah, pause. Okay, hang on. Why is it?
Because I'm sitting next to my partner's parents were dentists for so many years and dentist lecturers, so they taught dentistry. And there's a heap of fake teeth molds, like to teach how to do implants and things, just next to me. In the
Oh my fucking God, do you know how expensive those are?
I can send you photos. I'll send you a
Oh my God, please. I receive packages of this nature just at random. I have received like unsolicited molds of people's teeth before. I was going to say I am sitting beneath a hand-painted mandible. Like my house is very teeth oriented. Oh my God, Sarah, your photo just came through, and first of all, I will reiterate, do you know how fucking expensive those are? But also, like, what a beautiful room.
Anyway, hello, audience.
Whoa.
Welcome.
This is the show where we jump down random internet rabbit holes. We let our freak flag fly, and we set sail all across the internet of Wikipedia, or not, if we go really deep into the lore. And we all start on the same wiki page every week. We click around, and whatever we find that we cannot stop reading, we share with you and with each other. This week, we started on Blizzard, the company.
Yeah. Just got bought by Microsoft.
You can guess whose choice that was.
Where did everybody end up?
Well, I ended up on the Wikipedia page for multiplayer online battle arenas, or MOBAs.
How many clicks did you do?
Like 3.
Okay. I was going to say, you didn't get very far.
I didn't get very far.
Wow.
But awesome.
Okay, so I landed on Miraculous Rabbit Birth by Human.
What?
Excuse me?
I've summarized it a little bit, not to give away any punchlines, but holy shit. You guys are going to love this story.
Well, I ended up in levies.
Levies.
Like you pay a levy?
No. And also not like, drove my Chevy to the levee and the levee was dry. Not that either.
Oh, I forgot about that song and the fact that a levee was like a creek. No.
I don't even know what that is, but this is not that either.
Doesn't matter. It's not that. Cool.
But I can't tell you what it is because I would give it away.
Give it away.
And first we've got to do question of the week. So this week's question is a Lindsay special, and it was, what online or magazine quiz have you done and the result has just stuck with you or haunted you for your life? Lindsay, I'm going to let you go first.
Well, to appreciate why this stuck with me, I think you have to know a little bit about what young Lindsay, high school Lindsay is like. This is a quiz that I took on my friend's laptop in high school. So I was tragically goody two shoes. Always sat in the front of the classroom with my hands crossed on my desk, always just really eager to do homework and participate. Never wore makeup, never really did anything extraordinary or fun or dangerous. And I didn't even...
This sounds like me. Look at us now.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's why we're fucked up now. And I didn't even say swear words until I was about 16. So I was very, very goody two shoes.
Child.
I was very prude. I hated when people would make sex jokes around me. Very just uptight. Anyway, so my friends were all taking a quiz. What drug are you? Edgy and cool. And so they were getting heroin, cocaine, poppers, all kinds of fun stuff. And there would be this elaborate description of what it means about your personality and your spontaneity. And they thought it'd be hilarious if I took the quiz so they could tease me endlessly about it. Oh, Lindsay was this kind of drug. Well, I took the quiz and what came up was a picture of a cereal box. And it said life. You don't need drugs. You're high on life. And everyone was
so
like, you
nice.
fucking broke the quiz. I was too innocent for the drug quiz. That's what I feel like.
Wow.
I failed a BuzzFeed quiz. That's, yeah.
Wow.
Oh my god, I think that is so sweet and so pure.
Man. I really thought you were going to get like black tar heroin.
I know. That's what they all wanted me to get so they could be like, oh, badass Lindsay, black tar heroin. No, I'm no drugs.
High on life.
High on life. Okay.
Wow.
Okay. What about Drew?
So,
I feel like this is going to tell us a lot.
is it? Because I very, very, very rarely take any kind of internet quizzes because I'm not a big fan of them. But
You already know everything about yourself.
yeah, I know. Sorry. But the one that I actually took that like meant something to me, I know this is kind of a cop-out, but the Myers-Briggs test,
Ooh,
you know, the Myers-Briggs quiz.
yeah.
absolutely.
I'm an ISFJ, if anyone's wondering. That's on my dating profile, so all you ladies, you know. But that actually, like, when it described what that meant to me, I was like, it kind of labeled everything that I do perfectly, and I was like, whoa, what the fuck? Like, it like knows me so well. I know the Myers-Briggs isn't like, you know, actual science, but you know, it's just like, it was kind of cool having something be like, this is like what you're like. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm like. And it was just really cool to me.
I like that.
That is really nice.
You understand yourself.
Yeah, it was really nice. And it's definitely something. Definitely something. Now, Sarah, what's your quiz? What'd you do?
Okay. So, I can't really remember any from when I was younger. I used to do the magazine ones all the time, until I realized that, like, they're totally rigged. Like the ones where you would follow with your finger, and then I realized that, like, you could never get a certain answer. You just never landed there properly. And I remember being very but, like, so I remember actually only a few months ago, TikTok, I think, has diagnosed me with like ADHD or ADD. I see a lot of content about like how it expresses itself in women, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is how my brain functions. And so I did an online quiz like not an online quiz, but like a symptom checker.
Oh, okay.
So like, tell us how you work, and we'll tell you, you know, should you go and get a specialist opinion about if you have like an attention deficit disorder. And it came back with, yep, like you do a lot of these things, you should go talk to a doctor. And I'm like, oh my God, I think that made a lot of sense to me, because I just thought my brain worked like I thought everybody could do like multiple things at multiple times. And it was only the last couple of years that I realized, chatting to friends and colleagues, that like the way I work is very different to the way everyone else works. So I thought that was a big one.
Yeah, did you follow up?
I haven't yet. I've got an appointment in a couple of weeks to be like, can I be less distracted? So hopefully. But the quiz, so I was like, oh, well, that's not a fun one. So I was doing BuzzFeed quizzes last night to try get a good answer for you guys. And I took one that was like, oh, you know, pick your wedding dresses and we'll give you what type of aesthetic you are.
Ooh.
And I thought, okay, I love wedding dresses. Give me my vibe. And I'm thinking I'm going to get like whimsical fairy or like dark academia type vibe. No. Yeah. It told me I was cottagecore and that I was a basic bitch.
Oh no!
And I was very offended. But that's it.
That's just the truth. Like, that's just the science. You cannot. I'm sorry.
I can't go against the quiz.
Yeah. You can't go against the
That's
quiz.
just what it says.
Yeah, it's like you're probably, the quiz is like you're probably into horses. I'm like, I don't like horses.
Yeah, but now you are.
Don't understand.
Now you are, Sarah.
Yeah.
Now you are. Yep.
It's who I am now. But I would love to hear what the audience gets on random internet magazine quizzes. Please tell us. Lindsay, spruik the Twitter?
Oh yeah, please come join us on Go Ask Alice Pod.
Go Ask Alice Pod on Twitter or Go Ask Alice Podcast on Instagram.
Correct. Yeah. Tell us what kind of hilarious or just completely wrong or maybe even really helpful quizzes you've taken. Bonus points if you link it. I think that would be kind of fun to compare results. But yeah, I am decidedly curious what everybody's Myers-Briggs
there you
are.
go. And if you link the quiz, I'll take it just for you.
Oh, Drew will take it.
I'll take it, even though I hate them.
Drew love.
Yeah. So where do we want to start?
Well, I cannot for the life of me think of a thread that connects all of our stuff other than Blizzard Entertainment. I don't know.
I went down a wild rabbit hole to get to mine. I was all over the shop. I went like through Masonic temples, through cults again. I don't know how I ended up there again, but I went through them. I went through Mike Pence, for God's sake. Somehow I went through his page.
I scream laughed when you texted us that.
I clicked on that and I was like, nope, out of here we go. But yeah, what about you guys? So Drew, you got yours real quick. Do you wanna do yours up first?
Okay, sure.
Ooh, maybe we could do it. Wait a minute. What if we did it in degrees from the original topic?
Yeah, degrees of freedom.
So Drew, I don't think that's what degrees of freedom means. But Drew,
Wait, no, I'm a shit scientist.
degrees of separation. I think.
That's what, oh my God, that's what I was thinking of. Yes. Oh my God, can you just cancel me?
Why don't we do, because I think I took between 3 and 1 million clicks. So maybe we could do Drew, me, Sarah. Does that sound good?
Sounds good to me.
It sounds good.
Okay.
And you're gonna absolutely poo your pants when you hear my topic. It is absolutely insane. So everybody, you have to keep on.
I thought you were going to say keep your poo until...
Keep your pooing until you're...
No, keep your pants on. Everybody just get very prepared and excited to end the episode. So you stayed in the gaming realm.
I did because I'm a child and I like video games.
You're not a child.
Yeah, that's not what your quiz said.
Yeah, you're a child.
That's what mine said. We can't legally assign you drugs, you fucking infant.
All right, so MOBAs. Multiplayer online battle arenas. I'm going to call them MOBAs from now on because it's way easier to say than multiplayer online battle arena.
Is that what cool people call it? Like if I say that at like an E3 conference, everyone's going to just like pass me by. They know.
Yeah, they'd be like, yeah, you're good. They'd be like, they'd give you the chef's kiss like, you said MOBA.
MOBA, I know that.
I know what that is.
Yeah, I know.
And I've also come to realize that I'm going to use a ton of gaming jargon just like throughout this entire thing. So if at any point you're like, what the fuck does that mean? Just stop me and I'll happily explain it just to the best of my abilities. So, you know, whenever I say something, you'd be like, oh, Drew, what's that? I'll let you know. I don't know how familiar you are with MOBAs, but they are very super popular and make up a huge portion of the esports, both in the sense of views and monetary prizes, where like the biggest monetary prize was about $60 million just for the winner, which is...
Is that League of Legends?
Yes, actually League of Legends is a MOBA.
Yes. Yes. Okay, cool. I am familiar.
Yeah, you got it.
Thank you.
Nice job, Sarah.
Take my medal now.
Fucking gamer girl.
No, this is all thanks to my old housemate Adam, who is so into League of Legends.
Yep.
And would watch the esports.
Yep. We, my college housemates and I would all watch the esports on our big TV and then scream about it like it was actual sports. But that's...
That's so pure.
Yep. But basically, if you play video games in any capacity, you've likely bumped against a MOBA at some point because they're just so omnipresent at this point. But if you're unfamiliar with MOBAs, let me explain them a little bit. So a MOBA is a subgenre of strategy games from an isometric perspective. So that's a top-down perspective. So you're viewing the battlefield from the top. You're not like first person or third person. It's from the top. with the basic premise being that you've got two teams of players who each individually control a single character, and they compete against each other on a predefined battlefield. So each character that is controlled by the players have distinct attributes, and these abilities will generally improve throughout the course of the game. So typically each character has 4 abilities that are specific to that character, and they can range from healing teammates to dealing damage to enemy units to inflicting what's called crowd control. So I'm just going to define that because I have a feeling you don't know what crowd control is.
That is a correct feeling, Drew.
So crowd control involves effects such as stuns, roots, silences, or basically any disabling effect that you can inflict on enemy characters. Now, what's a stun? What's a root? What's a silence? So a stun is an ability that causes the enemy unit to be unable to move and unable to cast any of their abilities. A root is an ability that causes the enemies to be unable to move, but they're still able to cast abilities, except for movement abilities, of course. And then a silence is...
not what I thought a root was.
What do you think? Go on.
What did you think? What did you think, Sarah?
No.
Come on. This is a safe place. I'll shut off my microphone if I laugh.
I don't know. I thought it was like when you teabag a character, because I see that.
Oh my
I see that when Simon plays games.
Oh my god.
Every now and again he does it to make me giggle, because I'll look over and he'll do it and I giggle.
Oh my god. I thought this was not the Alice After Dark episode. Jesus fucking Christ, you guys. We can't just go from an episode that says piss, haha, and now into this shit where we're just like talking, just flailing our genitals in video games. This is...
I'm not flailing my genitals.
Teabang is a form of toxicity, which we'll talk about.
Okay, yeah.
Great,
Cool.
excellent.
So a silence is an ability that causes the enemy to be able to move, but they're unable to cast abilities for a time. So those are the basics of crowd control. Anyway, there's tons of different abilities that characters can have. That's the whole point of a MOBA. Is each character has 4 abilities, and they can use those abilities after a cooldown where they can't use it for a period. It's very confusing, but also very complex, and it's great. Anyway, so the ultimate objective of a MOBA tends to be, and I say tends to be because there's a few MOBAs that this doesn't apply, so it tends to be to destroy the opponent's main structure, which is located on opposing sides of the battlefield. So let me send you what a battlefield actually looks like so that you can get an idea.
Oh wow, this is very broken. This is very generalized.
Yes, it's very generalized. This isn't for a specific game.
Are you going to describe it?
Yes, I will. I'll describe it in the gameplay section. So the premise itself is very easy, but the actual gameplay of MOBAs is extremely complex and is very skill-based. So now let's move into the typical gameplay that I touched on a little bit. And so I sent you what a MOBA map looks like. So the typical game starts with 10 players with 5 on each team. And as I said, these players are aiming to destroy the opposing team's main structure, but how is that achieved? So you can see the main structures, like Team Base 2 and Team Base 1, those are the main structures, and then you have these individual lanes that the characters basically move down, almost.
Can you think of it a bit like capture the flag, like you're trying to take their bases? Or is that different?
You're trying to destroy their bases on the way to destroying their main base. I don't think you do that in Capture the Flag.
I've I was just going to say disclaimer. I've never played Captured the Flag. I've just seen it on TV.
Yeah, Capture the Flag's a little different.
Okay. Cool. But we're trying to get to the enemy's base.
Yes, exactly. So typically these maps have 3 lanes, as you see. You've got top, bottom, and middle, which are pretty self-explanatory.
Stay in your lane.
Yeah. That's very apt here. Very apt.
Thank you.
So with these lanes, they all have, so those little blue dots or blue or red dots, those are computer controlled towers, and those towers can do quite a bit of damage to your hero if you walk up to them. So you don't tend to walk up to them alone. You tend to go with what are called creep waves. So basically what a creep wave is there are waves of minions that spawn from the main base, and they progress down the lane in a very specific path. And so as they're moving down the lane, you have 2 opposing sets of creep waves coming at each other, and they meet in the middle and fight each other. And so if you just left them to their own devices, they would just be fighting in the middle and doing not much. So what happens is if you know, as a character, what you do is you push with these lanes. The term is push. Because what's happening is if you were to attack these minions with your character, you're doing more damage than the minions would do themselves, and you start moving the wave further and further and further back until you get to a tower. And so when you get to the tower, that's when you start doing some damage to the tower itself, because the tower attacks minions. It prioritizes attacking minions over attacking heroes, and so you're able to do damage to the tower. So that's kind of like how the game progresses a little bit. Do you get that? It's a little bit complex.
No, I think it generally makes sense that you've got a tower somewhere, and on the opposite side of your game, there is your enemy's tower, and you've got 3 different routes you can take to get there, and along the way, there are obstacles and traps that are absolutely trying to kill you while you make your way over to the castle that's being defended, or base.
Yes, and when you're pushing a lane, the enemy doesn't tend to let you push freely. So it's a lot of, you'll be pushing at one point, you'll be defending at other points. So it's a lot of back and forth between in a match, typically.
Kind of like war.
Exactly. You'll go back and forth a little bit. It's not a linear path directly to their base. It's, you'll be pushing sometimes, they'll be pushing sometimes. So it heavily depends on what's happening in the game as to where you are. So now we move on to sections of the map that are not part of the lanes, and these are known as the jungle. So it's highlighted in green on the image that I sent you. So you can see Team 1, top jungle, bottom jungle. So basically the jungle is inhabited by neutral minions that can be killed for both experience and gold. And those are the 2 currencies that are typically in a MOBA. So experience lets you level up, of course, and get stronger, while gold lets you buy items that help you get stronger in specific ways. So as a side note, you also gain experience and gold from killing minions in lane and killing enemy heroes, with enemy heroes being the biggest reward for, XP and gold. So the jungle is not the only way you can get these 2 currencies, but it's a very good way if your character is designed to do that. So anyway, defeating the neutral minions in the jungle can also have a ton of different effects depending on what game you're playing, where sometimes they'll give you buffs, sometimes they'll help you push the lane. So jungle can be super important. So let's talk a little bit more about the heroes in general. So the heroes typically, and I'm going to say typically like 1,000 times here because there's so many different kinds of MOBAs that like the typical one is what I'm talking about. So heroes typically fall into specific roles within the team composition. So these roles are such as like tank, damage dealer, and support. So all of which have their own strengths and weaknesses. And MOBAs tend to have tons of characters to choose from, with League of Legends having more than 150 characters, which is just nuts. That's like a ton of fucking characters to deal with. It's a lot. So not only do you need to understand your character's strengths and weaknesses, but you need to know all the other characters' strengths and weaknesses to actually play it at like a reasonable level. Is you have to know, like, how do I attack this one person that they picked out of this 150? Like, it's a lot of knowledge that you just have to have at a base level to really play well in these games. And then not only that, but you also have to know all the items that you can purchase during the game. So in League of Legends, there are over 175 unique items that you can purchase that you have to keep track of. So not only 150 characters, but 175 unique items that like help your characters. And so you have to keep track of both of those during that entire period. And it just becomes a huge mess because it's just so much to keep track of.
I could not keep track of that. No way. That's too many things to hold in your brain at once.
Yeah, it's a lot of pure memory, and honestly, it comes down to a lot of experience, where you just have to be thrown into a game and experience what the character does and what the item does. It's a lot of just pure experience, which is why I have like days in my favorite MOBA, like days of hours played in my favorite MOBA, because it's just like that's just what you got to do. But anyway, so each character is deliberately limited in the role that they can fill, so that no hero typically is able to be powerful enough to win the game without support of their team. So mechanical skill, memorization, and cooperation are all necessary to effectively win games. So you need all 3 of those things to kind of come together to really make a game good or, play well. And that's a lot of where the toxicity in these kind of games comes in. Because these games are notoriously very, very toxic, especially League. League is very, very toxic. And I apologize to any League players, but They know. They know. But it's kind of, if one person messes up like once, you're at an XP deficit at that point, and that puts you behind, and then you just get more behind and more behind and more behind. So one mistake basically screws the whole entire game for you. And so, I mean, that's a little extreme, but also, I've seen it happen where one mistake can really just like throw the entire game. So it becomes very toxic very easily when just like one mistake is like, that's the end of your game, and you have to wait 45 minutes to, you're basically playing 45 minutes to lose. It's not fun. So that's where all the toxicity comes from, is just like the necessity of having, cooperation. It's relying on people is a problem,
No, I can't relate.
Yeah. So I will say there are, of course, guides within the games about specific items that you can buy, and descriptions of characters, so you don't completely go in blind when when you're facing a new character. But as I said, you just have to play a ton just to get familiar with all the characters. And, as the game progresses, each team gets stronger. So typically the experience is gained individually. So there may be slight disparity in levels on teams, but this is to be expected for each of the roles. Like a damage dealer is more likely to be a higher level than a tank or support, because they are the ones doing the killing of enemy heroes, which have massive rewards in experience and gold. So basically, when you're playing these kind of games, you end up having a lot of different level disparities between characters. And it's another source of toxicity is like, you're not doing your role enough. And that's kind of a problem.
Oh, yeah. I've let so many people down this way. Like, young me branching out into video games, I've always hated violence. And so I see the title healer and I'm like, oh my God, that sounds so just perfect. I'm going to restore balance amongst all this violence by being a ray of sunshine. I am going to heal the damage that's been done. I had no idea how heavily everybody relies on healers so that they can run into the fray, fuck shit up, be reckless little shits, and then you're just there to clean it up while they're doing it. So I made a lot of enemies in a lot of games by being a really bad healer.
This is me in D&D. Whenever I have healing powers, I completely forget it, and people are literally dying, and they're like looking at me, being like, "Can I get a D4, please?" Like,
please give me D4.
Yeah, I forgot that I could do that. Sorry.
Yeah. It's a funny thing you say that, because there's a constant trope in these games of blaming the healer whenever something goes wrong. You always blame the healer. Aww. So it's very funny you bring that up, because I'm also a healer. I'm a healer main, so I tend to play healer characters a lot, and I get blamed a lot when something goes wrong.
Let's make a healer support group.
A support group.
I feel like it's a bit like a goalie in soccer.
Yeah.
Like, it's always the goalie's fault if they get the ball in. But really, there was a lot going on for that ball to get down there in the first place. Yeah,
there's a lot to go wrong to have it be this last person who has to be the defense point. But a lot of people don't. That takes a lot of self-reflection, and a lot of people don't have that. It's just like, oh, I wasn't healed, so that's why we failed. Like, it's like, great, you're stupid, awesome. Anyway, these roles are super important to fill, and people tend to be very good with one character or a few characters. As I said, I typically play support characters because I'm a little support boy, but I have a few friends who only play characters that do damage. You know who you are.
You know who you are.
You know who you are.
Steve.
No, Steve he tends to play basically everything. He's a flex character. He plays a lot of flex.
What can't Steve do?
Nice.
What can't Steve do? That's true. But it's all preference. What you really like you're going to pick a role that you really fit with and tend to work with. So
yeah.
That's all just like the basics of a MOBA. I don't know. I feel like that was very long-winded, but it's just like MOBAs are very hard to explain because they're just like so much jargon just packed into one game. But anyway, after I investigated like what a MOBA is at its core, I looked up a little bit of the history about it because I kind of wanted to see where MOBAs came from. And so they can be traced back to 1989, the game Herzog Zwei, Zwei, Z-W-E-I. Zwei. That's the one. Zwei, that's the one. Herzog Zwei. On the Sega Mega Drive or the Sega Genesis. And this game has been cited as the precursor to MOBA genre, where the player controlled a single unit in one of two opposing sides of a battlefield. So then we move to 1998, where the game Future Cop LAPD featured a strategic precinct assault mode in which players would actively fight alongside non-player units. And these two games have been cited as the inspiration for both Warcraft and StarCraft, as well as just MOBAs in general. And Warcraft and StarCraft, guess what? They were made by Blizzard, which is where we started. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about Blizzard a lot.
Full circle.
We didn't go very far. We just left the house and turned back around.
Yeah, because in 1998, Blizzard Entertainment, our starting location, released the now famous real-time strategy game StarCraft, which came with editing tools to design custom maps. So these,
that's very advanced for the time.
Yeah, these editing tools allowed players to design non-standard rules and non-standard gameplay that could let you modify how these maps work and all sorts of different things about the gameplay, just so that you could make your own games, which is super, super cool. Became a little bit of a problem later, but so a modder known as Aeon64 used these tools, made a game called Aeon of Strife. He used his name, and he and or she used their name in the title, which is great. Anyway, which quickly became popular with the key features of AOS, or Aeon of Strife, becoming the foundation for MOBAs in general. So basically, AOS, players controlled a single powerful unit fighting amidst three lanes, which were protected by defensive towers, which sounds like a MOBA and kind of is the whole premise of a MOBA in general. But the areas outside of lanes were nearly vacant, and the early version of the game, heroes didn't have any special abilities. They only spent gold on weapons and armor upgrades. So this is kind of a very boiled down MOBA that just like it's kind of, you see the beginnings of MOBA forming, but you don't see it's not the final product yet. So now we move to 2002, where Blizzard again, our starting location, released the now famous Warcraft 3, Reign of Chaos, which accompanied the Warcraft 3 world editor. So a modder named Yule took Aeon of Strife and converted it into the Warcraft 3 editor, calling the custom map Defenders of the Ancient, or Dota. Sorry, Defense of the Ancients, or Dota.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know that's what Dota means.
Oh,
Defense of the Ancients.
I've heard of Dota before.
So they substantially improved the complexity of the game, but soon left the modding community. So Yule's out. So without a clear successor to Yule, modders began to create a variety of maps based on Dota that featured different heroes. So in 2003, after the release of the Warcraft expansion, The Frozen Throne, a modder named Mian created a Dota-style map that combined heroes from many other versions of Dota into a single map called Dota All-Stars. So soon after, a modder named Steve Feek, F-E-A-K, inherited Dota All-Stars, and it soon became a dominant map of the genre. So after more than a year of maintaining the map, Steve left the development to another modder named Nicious in 2005. So after a few weeks of development, the map was turned over to IceFrog, who immediately initiated large changes to the mechanics of the game and greatly deepened its complexity and capacity for innovative gameplay. So basically, this has kind of been handed out back and forth between a bunch of modders, and it ends with IceFrog, who really kind of developed Dota as like the Dota we kind of know today. So these changes were extremely well received, and it was credited that Dota provided the most significant inspiration for the MOBA genre for years to come. So IceFrog is kind of, is often cited as being the, the starter of MOBAs, the predecessor of MOBAs, whatever it is, So now we move to 2008, where the popularity of Dota attracted many commercial attention. So since the format was tied to Blizzard property, developers began to work on their own Dota-style games. So a Flash web game called Minions was created by Casual Collective in 2008. Gas-Powered Games released the first standalone commercial title in a MOBA genre called Demigod in 2009. And in late 2009, Riot Games released a little game called League of Legends, which was... has become extremely popular. I don't know. I'm assuming our audience has probably heard of League of Legends because it's so omnipresent. But, you know. So Riot actually began to refer to the game genre as a MOBA formally at this time. So League of Legends was technically the first game that was referred to as a MOBA. So in 2009, IceFrog was hired by Valve, the company that owns Steam, in order to design a sequel to their original map. And then in 2010, S2 Games released Heroes of Newerth, which unfortunately completely shut down last year. And that Heroes of Newerth, my friends used to play that a ton, and I have never, ever seen a game that was more toxic than that. I have never seen a game. I have been called the worst things I've ever read on Heroes of Newerth because it was just so toxic.
Why was it so toxic?
Because it was a very, very high skill-based game, and it was very easy to kick down.
Oh, no.
Where you could just, like, one mess up and the entire game was thrown for 45 minutes. And these games are long. As I said, they're like 45 minutes long. And so you're just sitting there and getting destroyed for 45 minutes straight. And it's very easy to become toxic at that point.
So you give people a little bit of power and they just turn into monsters.
I feel like that's the motto for the world.
Yeah, right? Oh, yeah. So 2010, or that's where we are now. Valve announced Dota 2, which I'm sure we're a little bit familiar with. That's the other big MOBA. It's Dota 2 and League are the kind of the big ones that are out right now. And funny enough, Valve had a clash with Riot Games for the trademark of Dota, which Valve won. And in 2012, Blizzard, then Activision Blizzard now, settled a trademark dispute with Valve over the usage of the Dota name and announced their own MOBA, Heroes of the Storm, or HOTS, my personal favorite MOBA, in that year. So Dota 2 was released in 2013, and then in 2014, Hi-Rez Studios released Smite, which is a MOBA with a third-person perspective, which is very neat. It's actually all based on gods. Gods and different gods of different cultures, and they all fight each other. It's great. Anyway, so HOTS was released in 2015, and that's kind of like the most modern MOBAs that we have now. So soon after, the market for MOBAs was completely saturated, as every company was trying to jump on the MOBA train and release their own take on the genre. So EA, Warner Brothers, and even Epic Games tried to release MOBAs that never really took off, and shortly after release, the servers were shut down. Which is unfortunate because I really like the Epic Games MOBA, which is fun, but it's gone now. But anyway, there is actually hope in the genre, with Pokemon releasing a MOBA in 2021 called Pokemon Unite, which is much more kid-friendly MOBA, but when you play it...
You just said that they will release it in 2021?
No, they released it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was released in 2021, sorry. Which is it's a very kid-friendly MOBA, but also... when you play it as an adult, it feels like you're stomping on children, which doesn't feel great.
Does that mean you have to play it like on the internet? Like you're just like paired up with strangers, and then those strangers are usually kids?
You're paired up with strangers, and those strangers are usually children. And you when you play against them, it's very easy to be the top player in the game.
Yeah, like that's no fun.
It's a little fun.
No, it's no fun.
It's a little bit fun.
If I was editing this episode, I would just delete your opinion. Okay, I guess some people think it's fun.
It's fun. Well, when you actually get a decent match, it's fun. Or like a decent match with decent people. Anyway.
That's why I'm so... Oh my God.
But it's fun to stomp.
No, poor kids.
Poor children. They have no idea what they're doing. Anyway, so MOBAs are super fun. Well, they can be super fun. They're extremely complex, and they let you get hours and hours of entertainment if you let them. But they also are very toxic. But you know that's kind of gaming in general. I say that as a gamer boy. Anyway, I wanted to know a little bit more about MOBAs, and now I do. So that's MOBAs kind of in a nutshell. So if you have any questions, I've got 5 minutes for question and answer section.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, go on.
When you complain about the community being toxic, did you ever stop to think that people who want to stomp on children might be toxic?
Yes. And I fully admit that I have had spouts of really bad toxicity, especially when I played Overwatch. I was you can ask some of my friends. There was a good third of a year that I was just like pissed off constantly. Like people would get short answers from me.
Really?
Like I was so pissed off because I was playing this game so much.
That sounds so unhealthy.
It was. I hated life at that point.
Oh my.
Overwatch is the worst game in the world. I hate that game.
We're gonna get sued by Overwatch.
No, fuck Overwatch. They're already getting sued for sexual assault stuff, so that's besides the point.
Isn't Blizzard
Really?
too?
Yes, that's Blizzard. Blizzard is Overwatch.
Oh dear.
Yeah, they're up Shit's Creek right now, which I kind of regret making that our starting point. But anyway, they got bought by Microsoft, which is hopefully
It
they'll
can only
clean
go up
Yeah.
from here.
Yeah, it can really only go up from
I
here.
think it's so shocking, like how violent or verbally violent, I guess, and aggressive people can get when playing video games. Like sometimes you see those like compilation videos of just people losing it to random strangers on the internet when something doesn't go right in MOBAs, and it's like, wow.
Yeah, in MOBAs and anything. It could be literally anything and people
Just
lose
people, we've got, I don't know, like, have humans always had this shorter fuse, or is it getting worse? Who knows? Let us know if you're a psychologist.
I think it's because you're forcing strangers into a very, very, very competitive atmosphere, and then if one person messes up, it's very easy to dogpile on them, and so it becomes very toxic because it's just like you're so high stress that we call it being sweaty. If you're playing really hard, you're being sweaty. If you're playing so hard that you don't want to mess up, you're under so much stress that it's just like it becomes so unfun that it's just so easy to like kind of strike out at people and blame them for things. So it's toxicity makes sense when you look at it that way, but it sucks anyway. So it's kind of the nature
So it's just
of
a
it.
high stress situation with like a lot of groupthink going
Yeah,
on.
exactly.
I wonder if this happens in actual battlefields, like in actual combat, if the camaraderie does fall apart if someone makes a mistake, or is it the opposite where they stick together more and they support people on like not mistakes, but anything that could be deemed as a mistake. Maybe they support them and logic them through it.
I think it's a little different. Because on the battlefield, like I'm talking like I know, but I think you actually like know the people around you versus being complete strangers. You have more empathy and you can actually see them versus like this is just a screen. It's you don't have it. You don't have any empathy for that person. At least I don't.
No, that's
God.
a great point. So, with Drew admitting to not having empathy on screen.
Well, that's awesome, Drew. I love that we got to learn a little bit about how toxic you are, but also a little bit about
Yes.
the history of. I don't know. This kind of history is something I truly don't think about because I consider it to be very modern. And so it's just very cool to see. Like, for example, I never knew that it was just users who were just riffing off of this like motif or this map style that created these like really well-known games like Dota, for example.
Yeah.
I truly never knew that was the history.
Yeah, it's just modders. Modders did
Modders
it.
modern.
Modders modern.
Well, my topic has basically nothing to do with this. You know what? I will say, I think that the common thread the bridge between your topic and mine is that I also was kind of clickbaited based on my personal hobbies and interests. That's what got me interested. So I said that I was going to talk about levies, but the reason I got to levies, the penultimate page I got to, is a drawing room.
Oh.
Okay. So
Like an old-fashioned Victorian drawing room.
it is in fact so old fashioned that it goes back to the Renaissance, the concept of a drawing room. And
wow.
so
Cool.
my hobby, just like I was telling you guys not too long ago, I love sort of 1800s literature a fuck ton. I love all literature, but I'm a huge nerd for the Bronte sisters and things that are around that era. And one of the things that constantly comes up in novels like this is they retire to the drawing room. And it is one of those things that I just pretend I understand. I pretend I know what that is, but I have no fucking clue what a drawing room is.
I just assumed it was like a man cave.
Okay, no, so I always thought that it just happened to be the place where they keep their easels and art supplies, like that they just draw in there.
Yeah.
No.
It wasn't.
So a drawing room in modern terms is essentially a living room. It morphed into the modern day living room.
Oh, that's so much less exciting.
It is. And what's funny is that a drawing room is kind of like a slang or abbreviation term for the withdrawing room.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
And what it actually means is, let's say you have, let's say maybe you're in like 1800s London society and you have like a really banging dinner party, whatever. And you're like, we just ate really good food. The servants are taking care of the part we don't care about. What are we going to do next? And the ladies would withdraw to an adjacent chamber. And then the tablecloth would be cleared and, various other accoutrements on the table. And brandy would be served to the men with their cigars. They talk politics at the table, and the women are in another room and they don't have to sully themselves with the dealings of the real world.
They don't have to deal with the bullshit of their drunk husband.
Precisely. So maybe this kind of routine is a little bit familiar in really old novels that you've read, where people withdraw to a particular room after dinner and then they go and hang out and socialize there. That's what a drawing room is.
That is so cool.
I never knew. And what I loved is in the wiki article, they say in the 16th to 18th century, this is where the owner of the house, his dog, or distinguished guests would withdraw for more privacy.
Oh, dog.
So that is kind of where the drawing room or living room sort of concept comes from. But I promised to talk about levees. So in 18th century London, and I believe most often France, so a levee in the full glory of its accent marks is a word that has an accent mark on one of the E's. There's 3 E's in the word, and it's short, but it's just Levee. And one of them has an accent. It's a French word. So I'm going to get into the French history of what a levee is.
Okay.
But another meaning for a drawing room, or particularly a levee, is that room outside of the bedroom or part of the bedroom where you make your first appearance for the day if you are nobility or royalty.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So it was difficult for me, full disclosure, to differentiate between, like, when is it the drawing room, meaning like after dinner party, and when is it like I'm waking up and getting dressed? The wiki article's not very clear about that transition or that part of the history. So the way that I interpret this is that these are, at the core of it, a room for entertaining private guests. But I'm going to get into what that means. So there's the after dinner aperitif of the guests in one room, and in this interpretation and in the deep history of the drawing room, I'm going to actually focus a little bit more on the room that is connected to the bedroom, where you wake up, get dressed, and entertain some private guests.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Which is hilarious, because I'll make a note here. My original topic for this week was deeply inappropriate, and we are saving it for Patreon material. So that will be Alice After Dark. My Greek genius was like, I am inspired by inappropriate things right now. So I still landed on something a little bit naughty, which is a levee.
We wouldn't want it any other way.
And if it's not intentionally naughty, I'm just going to insinuate that it is.
Okay.
So mostly this is French history, and it applies mostly to the royalty. And so you may have seen this in I think more pop culture references to like Versailles. We're going to talk a bit about Versailles, but kind of the idea that just everything about the king is so magnificent and holy and important that like even the process of him waking up and getting dressed has to be like a full-blown affair, right?
Has to be a thing. Oh,
It has to
how
be an
exhausting.
event. It's very exorbitant. And yeah. So I'm actually, before I get into the deep history, I wanted to see the wiki article for a levy kind of breaks it down into different countries, what they do in this chamber, or what those I guess rituals, so to speak, were like. And I thought it was interesting that there was an American section. And I was like, when the fuck do Americans ever use a room like this? Or when did we ever have such a like pomp and circumstance around getting dressed? So what's funny is that using both terms, I guess maybe this is more of the take of the or a blend of a drawing room and a levee. But apparently right around the time of the Revolutionary War, Washington and Martha, so George Washington and Martha actually had people come over, just like random ass people, like public people, just come over to their house and like hang out in a parlor just to be like relatable and to like show that they they're just like, hey, come chat for an hour, tell me what your problems are, as the American people.
Oh my God, can you imagine if that happened now?
Yeah. Well, so what's funny is Washington did this. Adam did this, the second president of the United States, and then Jefferson ended it.
Oh, he's such a joy kill.
So it ended very quickly. It ended very, very soon. And I wonder if that had to do with like old world traditions that they were kind of rebelling from around the time of the Revolutionary War. But I thought it was interesting that Americans very, very briefly did this at the beginning of our nation's history. I couldn't find anything on Australia. I did look. So I'm sorry, Sarah.
We are not as cultured.
You're just also a baby country.
In comparison to old British. Yeah, we are such a baby country because really, yeah, a lot of those traditions had kind of passed by the time Australian cities were being built and populated.
Yeah, and you guys were kind of first populated by rogue types that maybe would not have done this anyway.
Done it, yeah.
Yes.
But the history of a levee, the earliest history, at least in the wiki article, begins in the 700s.
Wow.
Yeah, so Charlemagne of France did this with his friends. He invited his
Just his buddies.
He invited his friends to come over and watch him get dressed.
Like, that's crazy. If you invited me over and was like, hey, come watch me get dressed, I'd be like, I'm sorry, I have to sleep.
Well, I wanted to ask, when you guys wake up in the morning before you get out of bed, what is the first thing you do realistically?
I'll probably check my phone.
Yeah. Okay, same. You open Twitter.
Oh yeah, I'll probably open Twitter, or I look at, check, make sure the world's not burning down completely. And then I get a cheeky, like maybe 10 pages of the book I'm reading in before I have to like force myself out of bed.
So this tradition is 1,300 years old. That is nuts. Charlemagne was exactly the same way.
You want to check in with your friends, see what's happening.
He would invite his friends over, not just to watch him get dressed like a pervert, but also to bring the day's discourse with them. Just like, hey, you boy, what are people upset about today? And so he would quite literally invite people in to kind of just give both sides of a story or their sides of an argument. If it's people who were maybe higher up in nobility and they were having some kind of a clash with each other. And as he's like getting dressed, he would just give his final judgment on the case. He was like, get all the gossip and then be like, Fred's right. And then move on with the day.
Wow.
Laying down the law.
Yeah, I kind of love that. Like, just open Twitter, give an absolute opinion, and then everyone's done arguing, and then just off with the rest of the day.
Off for the rest of the day.
Wow, humans are so bizarre, aren't we?
We've been the same. We wake up and we're like, is the world on fire? Just like you said.
Nothing too important. Okay, I'll move on.
So fast forward now, Renaissance era, 1530s. One of the big names of the Renaissance, the Medicis, obviously.
Yes.
I forgot or never knew that Catherine de' Medici was like married to Henry II, like the king.
Ooh.
I didn't know that or realize
wow.
that. I was like, yeah. So
I didn't know that either.
there are written records of Catherine de Medici telling her son, hey, you should continue this tradition like your father did, where you get dressed and you invite your friends over to watch you.
Come on in.
But what she was applauding about her husband, about Henry II, was that he allowed anybody. I mean, I think that there had to be an invitation or some kind of, I don't think it was just like, all right, doors are open, everyone come on in. I think it was a little bit more stringent than that. But basically, the idea was that anybody from nobles down to servants, anywhere in the food chain, you were allowed to come in and kind of give him your thoughts. And this did really good things for the public opinion of Henry II. And his son, like I said, continued the tradition, and it said for him specifically that he required invitations, or, you know, you had to have an invitation to come watch and get a word in at the start of his day. But I think that kind of echoes in the American tradition, that getting this like favorable political opinion, like, hey, I'm just one of the normal people. You're watching me get dressed, like I put my pants on same way you do.
Yeah, just with like 3 servants helping you pull them up.
I am so glad you said that.
Oh.
We're gonna get there. What were you gonna say though?
I was gonna say, how long did this whole charade like go on for? Like, was it hours spent, or was it a quick 20-minute dressing, tell me your issues, and then get out?
I don't have the exact times just from the wiki article, but I am positive that is like attainable information, especially at Versailles, which I'll mention in a second. But I get the sense that it was probably either a drawn out process or a stressful process, because they made sure to mention that this did not continue in that family line, the one Henry that I was just bringing up, because King Philip V of Spain. Oh, sorry. This is okay. I'm jumping ahead a little bit. It wasn't in the Henry line. It was in Louis XIV, which is Versailles. The guy who lived in Versailles, his grandson Philip V of Spain, specifically tried to spend all morning in bed so that he could avoid everybody bothering him.
I also identify with this when I feel like really already defeated in the morning, and I don't really want to get out of bed because I don't want to check my emails and see what's happening and all that jazz.
Right.
I so feel this.
That is the exact equivalent of not wanting to check your emails in bed. Is I don't want the whole fucking town coming in and telling me all their problems the minute I get out of bed. So the grand finale, I think, to really top us all off, is to go into the mid 1600s, early 1700s, Louis XIV of Versailles. And I've talked about Versailles before in earlier episodes. And so I'll recap a little bit that's pertinent to this image I want you to have, which is that Versailles was not only extremely lavish, but it was huge, and everything was an occasion. Everything was a big deal. And participation was compulsory, because if you just try to take the most toxic social magnifying glass you can think of, like, you know, was it high school where you cared what everybody thought about you, or middle school, or college, or your job,
or currently,
and just like really ramp that up, that's Versailles. And I think I've told you about this before, where it's like one of those things where if the king sneezes and you don't act like the world is ending because he might be sick, then you don't love the king enough, and everybody's going to judge you. It was very toxic. It was more toxic than Dota in Versailles, I would wager. Everybody's trying to outdo each other. Everybody's trying to outface each other, outperform each other. It was very, very over the top. And part of the reason Louis XIV did this is because he wanted all of his nobles to hang out in Versailles, stay in Versailles, and not get involved in politics. So the entire thing was a drawn out distraction technique so that he could continue doing whatever the fuck he wanted.
That is so cheeky.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a Trump-esque
It
thing.
really is.
Where it's like make make a distraction over here, distraction over there.
And do it by, you're essentially like full-time bribing these people. You're saying like, you are going to live in my palace with me. I'm going to make sure that you have the most opulent lifestyle possible. But it's all just a huge distraction, a huge ruse. And, you know, what do bored rich people do? They just hyperfixate on appearance, or, you know, do things that just don't actually matter and put a lot of like meaning into them, like buying monkey NFTs. This is just so this is essentially what's happening in Versailles. I've mentioned the Goncourt brothers, who left these immaculate journals and diaries of just the day-to-day goings on in Versailles, which is why we have so much information about Versailles. So King Louis XIV's levee was very well documented.
And did some saucy stuff happen?
Well, I'm sure that there was, and I kind of regret not digging deeper, because I'm sure that there could have been things like he farted and everybody had to like comment on it. Like, you know, like I bet there was shit like that. I should follow up.
Delicious.
Your Grace, best one yet. But I found it just very, very funny. I'm going to describe to you what it was, and you'll see why I was so entertained. So it was nothing short of elaborate. There were two basic main parts. There was the grand levee and the petite levee. So the grand levee was the beginning, and it would be 8:15 in the morning, and he draws the curtains in his bed. And I'm going to make a little side note here that sometimes he would actually just go out and hunt before the levee and then just like sneak back into bed, because this thing probably took a really long time. So 8:15, I'm up. Like, you know, he sits up in bed and the nobles come in. And the wiki article specifically said you could purchase admission or purchase a slot in the grand levee. So I love that you could buy admission to this completely underwhelming event. Yeah. So he sits up in bed and he's wearing his little nightshirt and a short wig. He's wearing a fucking wig to sleep, sits up in bed. And the chief gentleman of the bedchamber, this was a highly prized role, comes over and pours him some holy water to start his day.
To drink?
I think it didn't say, but I think so. I don't know.
Wow. I thought that was like sacrilege to drink holy water. Maybe you're meant to.
Maybe it was to bless him with. I don't know.
Maybe just bless himself.
Yeah, maybe.
Just splash it on him.
A little splash splash.
Wake up.
Yeah, just a little spritz to freshen your.
A little spritz of holy water.
So chief gentleman, thank you of doing that. Thank you for doing that. Thank you of doing that. Then the master of the bedchamber and the first servant, both very prized roles yet again, high nobility, each come over and hold one sleeve of his shirt. They gently remove his shirt. And what
spoiled boy.
What I love about this is then the chief gentleman of the bedchamber comes over with the king's shirt for the day, but the wiki article made note that it had either been shaken out or changed because the king, quote, perspired freely.
Ooh.
So I think he just takes this sweaty ass shirt, say what I wore yesterday, comes over and gives it to the king. And the king himself was very well known and praised for being self-sufficient. And
could he put a shirt on?
He put his own shirt on. He dressed himself. And at this time, while he's starting to kind of dress himself, specifically, people would give very short remarks that, again, I'm not making this up. This is not my artistic license. They had rehearsed. So whatever small thing that they're going to relay to the king had to be short, snappy, interesting, and important. And they would have rehearsed it several times beforehand. to tell him while he's putting on his clothes.
And so they're watching him put on the clothing.
They watch him and then they retire to say a prayer specifically for him for that day.
God, what an awkward beginning to your morning.
Well, that was the grand levee, and then the petite levee or the premier levee followed. So it gets worse.
Okay. Could you buy tickets to the premiere petite levee, or is this like an invite only situation?
So I think I'm going to speculate that it must have been possible, because this is where we start to let in more and more people who are not as high nobility.
Oh.
Okay.
So
it's not so petite.
It's not. No. But I guess maybe that's like kind of throwing shade, because it's like, oh, you're a little less important. Like, oh, you're petite compared to the people who were invited. As he's dressing himself, because he is so independent, like really proud, they would start to let in small groups of people trickling in, so that by the time his stockings and shoes were on, everybody was packed into the room staring at him. And at this point, they start to let in women, and through some kind of, quote, cramped back door, they let in the legitimate and illegitimate children alike, and all of their spouses. So all the goddamn women and children are just packed in along all the other nobles, staring at this God-given king. Just, what are you gonna do now?
These rooms must have been huge.
Yeah, I'm glad you say that, because I was just imagining it was a normal sized room and people were just really packed in.
It could have been. I think it's more comical if they were all packed in, and the king's like trying to put his shoes on, like, oh, excuse me, oh, sorry, I just need to bend over. Oh, sorry, thank you.
And there's just little kid in the back's like, Papa.
It's like, no, remember, I'm your secret papa.
Secret papa. Well, what's funny is that, so this is like, kind of basically the end, and then they all, I think, proceed to like an antecedent chamber. They leave the room basically after this. And I think what's funny is that at this point, the king starts to kind of interact with people a little bit more. And Louis XIV, this was actually controversial, which is amazing. If they worship somebody enough that they are like, each two people are taking his shirt off, it's kind of amazing. Anybody would speculate any kind of controversy about the king, God forbid. But people were actually kind of taken aback that he publicly recognized, this is great, he publicly recognized his illegitimate children and publicly made them legitimate.
Wow.
He was like, I realize that you...
That's so nice of him. Compared to the... Like, because you hear of so many men in history who are just like, bye.
I mean, that's true. I kind of see it as a flex of his power. Like... I'm so above the law. I'm so above social norms. Like, I am absolute. I can do whatever I want. And I'm just going to point to you and say, legitimate.
My offspring.
Yeah, this is my offspring.
Legitimate.
And so what I liked about this would be kind of my parting image, is that, as people are kind of filing out to go about the rest of the day, he's kind of going through, and, more people are getting to give their rehearsed comments to him and stuff. And he will specifically go over to his favorite children and give them instructions for the day, and then just let them off. So it could be that your own father just passes you right by for his favorites, and just doesn't look at Sally, but Timmy, go do well in your studies today, Timmy. So that the idea of a levee in summation is a sort of private room or place, although it doesn't seem very private. I think it is meant to be private and intimate, but is actually for public entertaining. That is kind of the idea of a levee, and I guess more broadly the idea of a drawing room through the different centuries, I guess, through the centuries of history, all the way from 700s to 18th century.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
I had no idea that this happened in the morning. That is incredible, and I'm so glad it doesn't happen now.
I'd be even more late to work.
I don't know. I'd like to get some news in the morning. Have my friends show up like, hey, yo.
You boy, what's the discourse? You know what I found super interesting is that there was just a tiny bit of information about women's levees. And of course, these were way, way more popular. But it reminded me so much of like the popularity of like YouTube videos or TikToks of like women doing their makeup, like
Get ready with me.
yes, like getting ready,
Yeah.
or like makeup tutorials or doing hair. So because a woman's morning routine, like a aristocratic woman, her morning routine would have been really elaborate. Like, okay, we need to style the hair. We've got so many more complicated pieces of clothing. We've got makeup. I would have thought that this all would have been taboo. But no, like mixed gender audiences would come and watch women's like aristocratic levies, watch them like put their makeup on. So the idea of watching makeup tutorials on YouTube goes as far back as like centuries ago.
Oh, I love that connection. That's good. That's good. It's a great connection.
We have been fascinated with fashion and appearance for a long time, I think.
My goodness, we so have. And I feel so guilty because I love watching those get ready with me videos while I get ready in the morning and just hearing them chat.
It's very much like that. It's very much like watch me style my wig, watch my servant style my wig, and watch my other servant powder my nose. And
Goodness.
yeah, humans don't change, I think, is the moral of the story. But the name of the drawing room does.
I love that. Humans don't change. Drawing room does.
But yeah, that was it. And sorry for being a little bit inappropriate, but a little bit voyeuristic.
No, I don't think that was inappropriate.
Definitely more mild than the other one.
That was
A little more.
such a tame compared to the Alice After Dark specials that we're going to get.
So, Drew, Sarah, how grateful are we to everybody who spends time with us?
We are very grateful. Very, very grateful.
So grateful. We can't even express it in words, but we can express our love in smooches.
You know who gives the best smooches?
You know it. You know it.
So we decided, by which I mean me, spur of the moment on Twitter, and didn't tell Drew, that if you leave any kind of review or rating, could be on iTunes, could be on Spotify, whatever, take a screenshot and tag us in it. Either Go Ask Alice Podcast on Instagram or Go Ask Alice Pod on Twitter, and you get a special smooch from Drew.
There we go. Okay.
I'm gonna
Warm those lips up.
get ready.
So, Only Farms on Instagram and SD1337 or SDLeet on Twitter. We want to say thank you, and we want to give you a little smooch. So, happy birthday, Mr. President. Mwah. There you go. There's your little smooch. For both of you.
Thank you for hanging out with us, you guys. And the smoochy door is always open. So come hang out and come send us your reviews so that you can make our day. And then we'll make yours again with Drew Smoochies. That was such a gentle one.
Back to the show.
Alrighty. Back to the show. Okay, so I think Lindsay's topic goes very nicely. It leaves me a nice little ledge to jump off into my topic, because we kind of ended in the 18th century or the 1700s, chatting about how this kind of died out in the idea of a levee, or watching people get dressed kind of died out in the early American establishments. And since then, it's not really a thing. So I would like to take us back to the 18th century or the early 1700s to talk about the miraculous rabbit births. And holy shit balls, guys. Okay, here we go.
I can't wait.
So we're going to start our story by following the life of a lady called Mary Toft. She was born in English. She was she was born in England in 1701, and she was part of what would be considered a peasant family, or not as wealthy family, because back in the 1700s, the wealth divide was just impeccable. The wealth divide was just absolutely insane compared to what we think about wealth divides these days. It was even greater back then, and much more division within different societies, different classes in different societies. So she grew up in Surrey in England, a big working community and working town where there was lots of farms and lots of agricultural work to be done. And so I thought I'd give you a little bit of a vibe check around what was the dealio with the 1700s, and what it might have been like for her back then. So it was super duper crowded. So London went from a population of about 500,000 people at the beginning of the 18th century to over 1 million at the end of the 18th century. So
Ooh.
Wow.
100 years, doubled.
Big jump.
Yeah, doubled its population, and that's just London, not to mention all the outskirt cities and towns. So,
Where do these people come from?
oh, people were popping them out left, right, and centre. This is when you had lots and lots of children, because again, I mean, they could now kind of afford. It was easier to keep people alive because the main diet for non-wealthy people was potatoes and bread and lots of carbohydrates. Meat was more scarce and quite expensive, but they kind of had that ability with wheat and with farming to grow large amounts of produce to keep more and more people alive and fed. And there was more work to be done because they kept being more people to feed. So this was also the beginning of the Industrial Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
So machines started to come in and take people's jobs. So all of a sudden you now have, about mid-18th century, a lot of jobs have been lost to machinery. So people are even poorer than they were at the beginning of this time, and they're really fighting to try fit into society and find a place to work. And I thought this was fascinating. So people were having babies like crazy. Really, they were having babies like rabbits, going at it.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, they were. So it's not uncommon for families to have upwards of 7 to 15 children. Like many
Jeez.
Yeah, so many times, because here's the kicker. So this is giving birth to those children. For every 1,000 children born, 500 would die before the age of 2 in the early 18th century.
Oh my God.
So you might have a lot of children, but not many would actually make it to adulthood.
Oh, that's tragic.
It is really tragic and really sad, and just a little perspective of what, some of the mindsets that, would have been going on. And remember, this is back in a time where not only did they not know depression was a thing, but postnatal depression was certainly not understood or considered. Yes, and this is also the time where, people legit thought you could have, ghosts in your blood. So, remember, we've got an open mind here. Medicine was a little iffy. So, we're taking it back to our lovely friend Mary Toft. So, in 1726, so she's about 25 years old, and she is pregnant with her 4th child already. Unfortunately, she lost that pregnancy with about a month and a half to go. So, it was a late-term miscarriage. So, trigger warning. We will talk about miscarriage a little bit here, but she unfortunately lost that child and had miscarried, and had seen a doctor about that, because with that type of miscarriage you do have quite a lot of blood clotting and things that are happening inside you. Anyway, so this happens, and she tells this story that she was working in the field. So she's very heavily pregnant, but because jobs were so scarce, money was so scarce, you had to do the work that you needed to do. So a lot of the time, pregnant women would be working quite manual labored jobs until they gave birth. So really...
Oh my God.
Yes,
Wow.
yeah. And this is also kind of contributed to why so many miscarriages happened, because if there's a lot of manual labor, there's lots of opportunities for accidents to happen, with either hitting the stomach or just pure exhaustion, not enough nutrients for the body to reject the pregnancy and say, I'm not strong enough for this anymore. And so that is what basically happened with Mary. And she was working in the field, and she started to have these violent contractions. And she said as this started to happen, she saw a rabbit bounce along. So that happened, very sad. However, this was in August. In early September, her neighbour was called because Mary was screaming and had seemingly gone back into labor. So even though she's had the miscarriage, she's had a midwife come in and go through the fact that she was no longer pregnant, nothing was happening, she'd lost the baby, she appears to be in full-on labor. And her neighbor, who was like, oh my goodness, like, we've got to try help her. So he watched on, he was trying to help her. She was having these violent contractions as she gave birth to several animal parts. The neighbor took the pieces to his mother-in-law, so they clearly not human. They looked like animal parts, and he's like, wow, what is this? And that neighbor happened to have a mother-in-law who was a well-known midwife in the town. So he's like, oh my goodness, we need to figure out what's happening. Like, you're still in pain. I'm going to take them to my mother-in-law. So he took him to her, and she was like, what the fuck is going on here? He had arrived with 3 legs of a tabby cat.
What?
And one rabbit leg.
Excuse me?
Excuse me? Excuse me? Yes. So he had arrived with animal legs and parts, and so the midwife was like, Jesus Christ, what's happening? Okay, so they all rush back. The same night she appears to go back into labor, more body parts are being expelled from her. So again, I think there was another cat leg, and then there was more rabbit legs, and then this time there was rabbit organs that were coming out that were not enclosed in a body. And so they started to write about this in the local town paper, and it started to, word by mouth started to go around very quickly in the next couple of days. Like, oh my goodness, this woman, she's had rabbits, like she's had rabbit babies, because this happened 17 more times.
No.
Yes, 17 more times over the course of this story. She had some form of a rabbit leave her body, which looked like the form of a birth, because they had midwives tending to her, and they even had men with midwives. I mean, that they also had doctors. I don't know why they called them a man midwife. You can be a midwife if you're a man, but you know, whatever. But they had all of these medical professionals tending to her and saying, yeah, like, her cervix is dilated, like she's clearly giving birth to these just weren't hidden up there, like there is something happening. So this story so widely spread, and this was the time of Mad King George I in England. Little Loopy, we'll probably touch on him in another topic one day, I'm sure, because he was a wild ride. But basically, Nosy George, he's like, okay, I want to know what's happening. What is happening? George. Yeah, curious George over here. So he's like, okay, what the hell is happening? Let's send down some court people. Let's send down some doctors. I want you to figure out what is happening. So he sends down some people to try investigate, and they witness her again deliver several parts of a rabbit. This time there was a rabbit torso, and it looked like there was lungs in it, so they wanted to test whether the lungs had ever breathed air. And apparently back in the ye old days, you could, well, I mean, I don't know if this is actual science or not, but they used to float lungs in water to see if they had ever taken in air. Okay. So they had gone away to, like, I guess, like a pharmacy or some type of medical workstation in the town to try do these experiments on these parts to figure out, had they ever been alive? What is happening here? They go away. They come back that same night. Again, she is in labor, having violent contractions.
The whole time, is she just laying in bed, like, contracting?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, she must have been in so much pain. Comes back, and a rabbit's head pops out this time. Oh, and more parts of a cat.
Wow.
Okay.
So they write back to Mad King George, and they are like, whoa, we think this shit is real. Like, we think this is a modern miracle, like a travesty of the human body. This is, something is happening here. However, there's a famous surgeon who is starting to be a little bit suspicious of what's happening. So he convinces King George that he needs to go down and examine this woman, because he's like, no way, this doesn't make any sense. And he was quite suspicious of it. But a lot of the medical professionals at the time had this idea that a woman could give birth to animal-like creatures. And again, this is back before they understood anything about modern medicine, which we know now. And if a woman had given birth or had miscarried a child with birth deformities, they would often think it wasn't human. And it was their lack of understanding of what was actually happening.
Oh, so they were just like, okay, they were like, if that's possible.
Yes, yeah. And so there was
Okay.
rumors at the time, you're gonna bloody love this, rumors at the time that when you were pregnant or with a child expecting, you were not to look at any animal too endearingly, because you might influence your child to look like that animal. Okay, so like, don't stare at the dog too hard.
Okay, all right.
I wish that worked. We could be so much cooler.
No.
It's true.
But that was the rumor. So some people believed it, and some people didn't. So this doctor rocks up to her little township and where she's staying, and realizes that, you know, every time he talks to her, she seems to be like crossing her legs quite hard, and she's squeezing her knees together, and he's like, I think she's trying to stop something from falling out. And he was concerned. He's like, are you in pain? Are you in labor again? She's like, nope, nothing to see here, nope. And he's like, okay, this is suspicious. So he takes back all of the animal parts to London for examination. I remember at this time, 17 different rabbits, they think, had come out in one form or another.
Up to this point, like, all 17 have come out.
Pretty much, yes, at this point. At this point now, all 17 have come out, as well as many different looking cat things. There was a rumor of like an ox heart, you know, all sorts of things had come out. And so he takes them back to London and back to his medical colleagues, and they noted that on these parts of the animals that had been expelled, it appeared that there were man-made cuts in the bones and in the flesh. So they're like, this does not ring natural to us. So they talk to the king, and he's now suspicious, and he thinks that they need to charge her on forgery. So they start to collect written testimony. Yeah, I know. Get this bitch off the street. She's forging babies.
She's forging that she's birthing shit.
I heard perjury, so I didn't realize you said forgery.
Oh my god.
Forgery. Yeah.
Forgery.
Anyway, so they're like, okay, so we're going to collect like written affidavits from people who are suspicious. So in the towns, they found many people who had said that they'd sold her husband and her sister-in-law rabbits and cats and, you know, bits of cuts of meat and all this stuff. And they started to get very suspicious. So they took her back to London and said that they needed to study her. I don't know whether she was under duress, like if she was forcibly taken back to London or if she agreed. But they took her back to London to do some medical studies on her. And while she was under 24-hour surveillance, now in a medical hospital, nothing happened. There were no more contractions, no more magic animals falling out her hoo-ha. Nothing was happening, and the doctor was like, okay, I know how to get her to admit that something was wrong. And he's like, well, you know, your stomach still looks very swollen. We're very worried that the rest of the animal parts might still be forming in you, and, you know, I think we need to do surgery. We might need to remove your womb. And she violently objected because she wanted to have more children.
Oh, shit.
Violently objected, and then came clean and spilled the beans. And it is exactly what you thought. She was sticking things up there.
What's amazing is that would still trigger contractions.
Yes, so I have some reason why they think this is.
Oh, okay.
So when she had her miscarriage, because it was quite a late stage miscarriage, her cervix was already dilated to a certain point, and there was an easier access straight from the vaginal canal into the actual uterus, where normally your cervix is, it prevents that. It's quite tight normally. However, she had not only just put the animal parts into her vaginal cavity, she had pushed them past her cervix into her uterus. And so these animal parts were in the uterus. The uterus is incredible. It knows exactly what's happening, and if, you know, when it realizes that it's been implanted with the egg, it starts to, you know, to form its special membranes and layers to protect whatever's in there. But it also knows when there's foreign objects in there that it needs to dispel or try to dispel. And so the body was trying to rid itself of of these things because it knew it wasn't meant to be in there. It was not natural. It wasn't triggering the right hormones. Just, you put a foreign...
What a brilliant organ.
Yeah. Well, really, our body, if you put a foreign object into our body, it tries to reject it quite quickly. Whether it be you've got like a splinter in your hand and your hand gets swollen because it's trying to send more fluid to that area, or even like organ donation, your body can tell when the tissue doesn't have the same type of things that it should.
When it's a forgery.
Yeah. Yeah. So your body knows that when your tissues are not
self versus non-self.
Yeah, exactly. When they're not going to be like a happy little mix. And this is why when you have organ transplants, you have to take like anti-rejection drugs to help your body accept the new tissue and make it think it is self. So you can imagine there is bits and bobs from rabbits, cats, and we think oxes up there. So it wants to throw them out, and it was. And so they think she was just, they think whoever was instigating this kept putting it up there continuously after it had already expelled one. They would continue. So everybody thought she was guilty, but she kept saying that like she was made to do it. And there's a lot of rumors and myths around whether she was kind of forced to do this by family and by friends for notoriety, or I don't know what they thought they were going to get. They didn't end up making any money off this, and she ended up getting charged with, I forget exactly what the charge was, but it had like vile actions in the wording of the charge. So she could have been sent to prison.
Charged for being vile.
Pretty much. Just doing naughty things. And she could have ended up in jail for a very long time, but the charges ended up getting dismissed, and she went back to live her normal life until she ended up dying of ovarian cancer. But yeah, that was a wild ride, and it turned out to all be this like elaborate hoax of a miraculous rabbit birth.
Whose idea was it?
We don't know. So some people think it was all her, and she was severely mentally ill at the time and probably suffering from hormonal imbalances and postnatal depression. And then some people think that it might have been a combination of that and kind of people taking advantage of her to get notoriety and to get, attention to the family, to the town. Yeah.
Wow, that is so fascinating.
It is, isn't it? I just thought it was wild, and also just...
Absolutely.
It sparked a lot of controversy because there was doctors who were like, yep, this is legitimate, this is legit, she must have looked at a rabbit, she's now having rabbits, who lost their entire careers over it when it came out, when she took back everything she had said and said, yes, this is all a lie. They lost their careers and ended up losing all their patients, and a lot of them died basically like in peasant situation because they had lost everything they had.
Which, I mean, like, I don't think that they deserved that, but at the same time, like, good that they could no longer practice on people.
Yeah.
Not practicing.
Like, okay, that was deserved. You should not have. I mean, that is unbelievable. That to me is like one of the clearest examples of like reality is stranger than fiction. Like, how the fuck would anybody even come up with that? That's why I want to know whose idea it was. Like, who came up with this?
I know. Isn't it just wild? Because it's something you would never, well, at least I don't think most people would ever consider as being like a fun hoax. Like, there's a lot more things you could do that are less harmful to yourself and less gross, painful, not hygienic one bit. Oh no! I mean,
no. I just don't get it. I have no explanation as to why it was done. I'm just so confused.
Yeah.
She would have had like the craziest UTI. Like, I thought you were gonna be like she died of like an infected bladder after this.
She was very, very ill, and they think there was probably some type of infection and like inflammatory inflammation around her uterus and her cervix. But she ended up getting better until she did end up dying of, they suspect, ovarian cancer. Again, back in the day, they could kind of tell with autopsies, But I do think she had a lot of reproductive health for the rest of her, like, so many issues for the rest of her life.
Do you know if she had any children after this?
No, I couldn't find out if she had had any more children after this. I would be amazed if she did.
That's what I'm thinking too. Like, she probably really fucked up that opportunity, or whoever was responsible. Like,
Yeah.
She'd had 17 rabbits, so that's a lot of children.
an extra huge thank you to everybody who's still here by the end of this episode. This was wild. Please come hang out with us, you freaks. We are at Go Ask Alice Pod on Twitter, Go Ask Alice Podcast on TikTok and Instagram. We have an email address that I forgot and nobody checks. Drew is here to give smooches, and Drew just made his own Twitter, so see if you can figure that out. Go find him. I'm not going to tell you what it is. You got to find it yourself. And if
Go
you're
find me.
listening right now on the iTunes sort of Apple way, it is right there, you hunk. It's right there to leave a review. You can just do it right now. Knock it off your to-do list. I don't know. Then you've made a stranger's day, I guess, if you did that. So you can leave a review.
You'll get praise and kisses from Drew. And if you're on the Spotify app, just right there, rate, hit the 5-star or whatever star you want to give us. We do not want to tell you what to think. You can think your own thoughts. But hit the stars and send it to us, and Drew will mention you in the next episode.
Only if we
Give
know.
you a big old smooch.
Yeah, big old smooch. Only if we know. I mean, if you could leave us a review and we never know, because I mean, I just don't want anyone to feel cheated out of a smooch. They're pretty special.
Pretty freaking special.
Thanks for hanging out with us, you guys. And we love Cam from Twitter.
Hey, Cam, we love you.
Love you. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye. Don't blow your poop load early.